Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's 9:30 in the morning on the West Coast on January 23rd. It's 12:30 on the East Coast. It's 5:30 in the United Kingdom.
You know what?
Whoops. Now I'm hearing this.
I think it's me.
Okay. Um, it's another exciting live opening to Westdoc, and we are online. Good morning. This is a very special day, as you probably know. I've been up since 5 o'clock this morning on the West Coast so that I could tune in to see the Oscar nominations. Before we get going on our little bit, I'm going to give you the news of the day. The Best Picture nominations were Call Me By Your Name, Darkest Hour, Dunkirk, Get Out, Lady Bird, Phantom Thread, The Post, The Shape of Water took the most nominations, and three billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri. And just for your information, the Best Director nominations were Paul Thomas Anderson for Phantom Thread, Guillermo del Toro for The Shape of Water, Greta Gerwig for Lady Bird, Chris Nolan for Dunkirk, and Jordan Peele for Get Out. So I think these are some really great movies. But I got to tell you, and maybe I'm prejudiced, the documentary films this year in both the feature branch and the shorts branch were every bit as sensational, um, if not better than a lot of the big feature films. Um, we're going to concentrate on documentary shorts today, but the documentary features that were nominated were Abacus, Small Enough to Jail, Faces and Places, Icarus, Last Men in Aleppo, and Strong Island. So we have 4 out of the 5 nominees in the documentary shorts branch, which I will introduce to you in a moment. But first, I want to say thanks to our sponsors for making this show possible. Media Central, Jay Schlossberg, who's back in the Washington, D.C. area, um, supplies film crews. When you need a crew and you're going to Afghanistan or Toronto or Palm Springs or any one of 111 countries, give Jay a call at Media Central. Go to mediacentral.net. And Pond 5, which is just the largest stock footage house, also has millions of uh, stills, hours and hours and hours of footage that you can get. You need a shot of anything. You can go online, find it, download it. It's watermarked, but then you can just, you know, uh, open your account. You'll be in business. Pond 5 has been really terrific and supportive. And the last sponsor is LumaForge, and this show is running off of LumaForge to some degree. I have a jellyfish here, which is their server, and they're the film people that got into the hard drive business. Give Sam Messman or Patrick Southern or somebody over at LumaForge a call if you need a server, hard drive, and if you're doing editing or anything that has to do with video on any NLE, that's the place. Okay, so I didn't forget the sponsors. Let's introduce our 4 out of the 5 documentary short nominees. Here we go. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Say hello to
Hello.
Laura Checkaway, who is the director of Edith and Eddie, um, in the upper left-hand corner. And in the upper right-hand corner is I must say, longtime friend, Frank Stifel. Heaven is a traffic jam on the 405. You're going to have to explain what that means to the people who haven't seen the film.
I will.
And in the lower left-hand corner is Thomas Lennon, who is the director of Knife Skills, and Elaine McMillian Sheldon, who is the director of Heroin.
Thanks for having
Hi,
us.
guys. How are you doing?
Great.
Good.
Can't be bad on a day like this.
So it's pretty exciting to be a Oscar nominee. I mean, in a way, you could just wrap it up now and go home because that's it.
Yeah.
From now on, every time anybody refers to you, they're going to say, Frank Stifel. Oscar nominee or
Yeah,
Oscar
the
winner,
first.
depending.
I think the line is the first line of your obituary has already been written.
Well,
We
that's
hope, we hope, as opposed to, he was incarcerated after.
well. The agenda today is I want to discuss all of your films. I haven't made any particular order. Does anybody want to? What were you doing at 5:38 a.m. Pacific time, 8:38 Eastern time? Laura, where were you? What
I,
was happening?
I was home in Brooklyn and I set my alarm for 8 minutes before the announcement. Um, I'll, t- I'll do it like this. Is that good?
That's fine.
Yeah, I set my alarm for 8 minutes before the announcement and put it on my laptop and screamed with joy.
And did your phone start ringing at 8:30? Did anybody call? I mean,
Yes, people I haven't heard from since,
from
God
years.
knows when.
Thomas, what happened with you?
Mid
What were you
school.
doing? You were on the East Coast too. You're in New York?
Yeah, I was on the East Coast. Um, let me start out by saying that all of us in this category knew that we mathematically had a 50% chance because there was 10 on the short list. And that, it turns out, at least for me, was psychologically competent. It's a good enough set of odds that you can't prevent from yourself from thinking about it. I also can't prevent myself from hearing myself here, so I'm going to take the headphones off. But it's also, a set of odds that where disappointment is very much in the cards. You have a 50% chance of being disappointed. So I would have to say that I was a wreck. And the question started. The problem began last night when I was saying to myself, "Okay, how am I going to get to sleep tonight?" And then I actually solved it. You know how I solved it? I said to myself, "Guaranteed, I'm going to be nominated." I'm already rehearsing I just said I'm gonna win. So I'm gonna win this nomination. So I'm not gonna worry about it. So I had to do that. That enabled me to sleep. Then I woke up way too early this morning, and then I thought, wait a minute, I'm back to 50-50. How am I going to deal with it? And I had to sort of work my way through this idea that it was going to be fine either way. And then I was okay. But I didn't want, unlike Laura, I didn't have the courage to actually log in. So I took myself out to the gym, and then I went and ran some errands, and then I looked at my watch, and it was 8:35, and I said to myself, if somebody doesn't call me, anybody, but if somebody doesn't call me in the next 5 minutes, my goose is cooked. And then my phone started ringing. See, right on cue.
Elaine?
Um, well, my husband and I made this film together. So we were at home and we got up early, made coffee. I did my morning routine of journaling and just trying to keep myself centered. I mean, I don't think I make docs for moments like this, but they certainly are icing on the cake of everything you would want. The exposure as a filmmaker to have your film seen by a larger audience, all those things. So we were thrilled. I mean, called my mom and dad. They were thrilled. I've been hearing from, lots of West Virginians. I grew up in the coal fields of West Virginia. It's not a very common thing for someone coming from the place I've come from to be nominated for an Oscar. So I'm sort of representing my state, and it's like nerve-wracking and awesome and very, very cool. And FaceTimed with all three women that are in the film, and they're blown away. And yeah, it's just been an exciting morning.
So, fair disclosure, in the upper right-hand corner is a dear close friend of mine, Frank Stiefel, who just got nominated for his film, and I'd love to hear what happened. I know you're in New York. You're an LA guy, but you happen to be in New York. But what were you? Were you in a hotel room somewhere? Were you?
We were in a hotel, and got up at around 8 o'clock. Woke my wife up. We tuned in. It was like a multimedia thing. We had, we were on Twitter. We were watching TV, and when they announced the name of the film, my wife thought they were sort of going through the short list, and then realized she was married to a lunatic because I knew it was a nominee. and suddenly this mature person starts bouncing on the bed. So it was great. I mean, I have to say that if the game show was be like you are right now or continue on to the big price, if I could sort of like keep this high, I'll take this.
Well, that's cool. Just as a comparison, I don't ever really talk about this, but this is the maybe the only time and the best time. But I was nominated in 2001. I was in a conference in Washington, D.C. with about 1,500 other filmmakers surrounding me. And in 2001, you have to remember, there were no smartphones. There was barely really acknowledgement of computer, and I had gone to this conference, and there were three or four computers off to the side that you could check your email, which was the only way you could check your email. And I went over there because I knew it was going to be online. And after struggling to get online, and this was dial-up, I think. I finally saw it, and I like looked around and wanted to tell somebody, and there was no, and they didn't even acknowledge it. It was like there was no short list, by the way. It was just you were nominated. Um, I want to say one thing, and I don't know if you've all seen the shortlist films, but one of the films that did not get nominated, and in the excitement, I'd forgotten it until the last minute. There's a film called Caballo, um, The Human Shopping Basket by Marie Becca Reese. And I was so confident that this film was going to be nominated. I got in touch with you guys, and I said, can you want to be on the show? We're going to do it live. She said, I can't be on the show because they want me to be on the news here in Oslo, Norway. So I pre-recorded, and I did a 15-minute interview with her, which is really terrific, which I have in the can, but I'm going to do at a future show. And that's a good time to say that our shows, as of now, are on every other Tuesday, and the next show will be February the 9th at a topic to be determined.
Now, are other people hearing funky stuff?
Yeah.
Because you were interrupted when you were plugging the time.
Okay, well, thank you for letting me know. I can't tell because I only hear you. I don't hear myself because I have myself muted. February 9th from today is the next West. Thomas, why don't we start with you, if that's all right? Why don't you tell us a little bit about Knife Skills and how it got started, and what was the evolution of that show?
Well, first of all, can I just say it's really fun to be here with all of you and to just be among peers who I respect. That's a real pleasure. When I realized that I was going to have to do a little bit of campaigning and making noise in order to have any shot at a nomination, I sort of dreaded it. And to my surprise, I really found the whole thing to be so much fun. So, and the biggest pleasure in that was just meeting fellow filmmakers. Knife Skills is a story that I just stumbled into. I was at a friend's house who's a chef, and I thought it was just going to be me and my wife and him and his wife, but there was this other odd guy who was at the table, and he was sort of mumbling a lot, and I couldn't quite figure out what his story was, but then he allowed as how he was going to be soon opening the greatest French restaurant in all of the United States. And I said, great. And he said, and it's going to be in Cleveland. And I thought that was maybe not the city where I would first imagine the greatest French restaurant in the U.S. to open, but that was it. And then he said, and the people who are going to run the restaurant are all formerly incarcerated. They're all going to be recently released from prison. And, I knew within 5 or 10 seconds that there was a possible film there. And my great good fortune was that I had that conversation with him when he hadn't yet opened the restaurant and hadn't really done anything. And I just said, could I maybe come out and just hang out a little bit and see what there is there. And he said, sure, and that was the beginning of the project.
So let me interrupt and let's run a clip from the film, and then let's run a clip from the film, and then let's talk about it.
This is going to be the most anticipated restaurant opening Cleveland's seen. And it happens today in about 10 minutes. All right, are we ready? There's like anticipation. You can feel it. It's like palpable.
Give me the Mackenzie, please. Hey, hot. Coming through. Coming behind you, hot. Coming behind you, hot. Just looking for me for
We're gonna be out of pairs.
I need those rabbit now.
One rabbit up.
That's her fault. She didn't tell him. She did not tell him. Okay? We're not fucking. You don't blame the fucking menu for your mistake.
Tell us about the making of the film.
Well, I came at it without any real knowledge of criminal justice reform or the kinds of. I mean, I was like a regular reader of the newspaper, no more, no less. And although I don't think ignorance is ever an advantage in making a film, I do think sometimes the lack of an agenda can be a help. Like I just went there and I just followed the story wherever it took me. And it was sort of alarming at times because the story went in directions that I didn't really expect, and I just had to trust it and just follow it. So, and then later on, I started reading about people coming out of prison and what the issues are with reentry, and I saw that in fact the things I was encountering were not that unusual, but I didn't understand it. I wasn't prepared for it, and I think that was really a great advantage. It's just a story that just unfolded in front of me.
And was there a production company involved, or how did it get financed, or do you have a distributor, and what's the status of it now?
Right. It was basically a financial disaster. I had a friend who I was very, very lucky to have a friend who is, I think the euphemism is a high net worth individual. I think that's the term. Who gave me $50,000 to start with, and that sounds like wonderful, but in fact it's like just enough money to really get you into trouble, because it's enough to get deep into the film, enough so that you really can't imagine turning back, but it's in no way enough to finish a film. And so I was taking paying jobs at the same time, and that's partly why it took so long to finish. And then I applied for a Soros grant, and then I had to wait 8 months to find out whether I was going to get that grant. So meanwhile, I felt very anxious because, like, who says I'm going to be able to finish this film? And these folks trusted me, and how am I going to get it done? And then I did get the grant, and then the same family that had been very supportive at the beginning came in at the end and helped me finish. But just because it's a short film doesn't mean it's a free film. I don't know how you guys did, but I saw a lot of production value in all of your work, and I bet you it wasn't nothing. People go, oh, it's a short, but everything takes money, and my film took some money, and it was a real stress.
And what is happening? Wait, do you put your?
I don't have a distributor. We finally have a couple of offers, so we're looking at them.
Well, guess what? My prediction is that as of today, things will change a little bit for you.
Well, I hope so.
We'll see. Maybe we'll do a follow-up show in 6 months and say you'll be sitting there counting all the money you're making.
Only if I have good news.
Elaine, you want to tell us a little bit about your film, please?
Sure. So my film is Heroin, and it's about Huntington, West Virginia. The overdose rate from opioids is 10 times the national average in that community, and it's been sort of dubbed the overdose capital of America because they became very transparent about those overdose numbers. Appalachia's been struggling with pills being flooded into this region for a decade now, and it's turned to heroin, and now it's turned to fentanyl and carfentanil, which is killing people left and right. And so I've lost classmates. I have classmates and friends in rehab, in recovery. And it just got to the point where I sort of needed a story to latch onto to understand how to get out of this. And I found these three women in Huntington, West Virginia: Jan Rader, Patricia Keller, and Nisha Freeman, who work on different levels of community involvement. Jan Rader is a first responder. She revives people from overdoses. Nisha Freeman goes out and helps women get off the street that are trapped in prostitution for their drug use. And Judge Patricia Keller runs one of the most successful drug courts in West Virginia, a state not, known for its progressive court systems. So just really inspired by these women and just felt like the country needed sort of them and their stories to maybe understand how we can get out of this, or at least figure out how to have conversations around solutions.
Let's take a look at a clip.
Female's been locked in the bathroom for over an hour. They can't get to her. She's overdosed on something.
Patient is unconscious.
I see this as a problem that has the potential to bankrupt the country. It's sad when you can drive around the city and say, oh, somebody died there, somebody died there.
You were doing so good.
I lost my job and shit. I couldn't help it. This is the only place I could turn to.
I can't tolerate you lying to your probation officer.
This is our community. We will not be defined by this problem.
Don't shy away from. I want to give you some direction and some structure.
We usually come out one night a week and we just give you some food.
Our parole officer didn't expect nothing from me.
We don't roll that way, do we?
Right, no, man.
Today's a special day.
5 months clean.
5 months clean. And I don't care if I save somebody 50 times. That's 50 chances to get into long-term recovery.
That's pretty heavy stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's these women, this is just a film, this is just a short piece of their life, just a snippet. We filmed over the course of a year. So a lot of things changed over that course of a year, from Jan becoming the first female fire chief in West Virginia's history. And they see a lot. We just filmed a snippet. They see so much even today, day to day. So I just really admire their resilience and just sort of, hope that this film can be a charge for more people to step up in their communities. And that's what it's about. It's about the power of the individual. It's not a drug film. It's not a film about statistics. It's a film about people trying to improve their communities.
How did the film come about, and how did it end up on HBO?
Well, my husband and I shot it together. He's the DP, and we started filming it in February of 2016 when we met Jan Rader. We filmed for about 7 days with her, and she introduced us to the other two women, and we sort of hung around until we could get access to drug court. And that sat on a hard drive for about 6 months until the Center for Investigative Reporting put a call out for short films about women making change by women directors. And Curran, my husband, and I looked at each other and we were like, we have these three amazing women that we already have access to. And so we went back and shot, another 20 days or so into 2017. And then we were lucky enough to have Netflix come on in that process and as a distributor. And it's just been amazing to have them open up the film to audiences and also allow us to do community screenings with it. So it was one of the few films I've made that actually got funding through the Center for Investigative Reporting, through the Glassbreaker initiative. So I'm very fortunate that that foundation money supported this film.
Wasn't there some connection, did you tell me earlier, about New York Times op docs originally, or no?
Well, our executive producer at Netflix is Jason Spingarncroft, and he was I think the founder of New York Times Op Docs, and so I worked with him while he was there. I made 2 or 3 op docs while I was there, and so now he's an EP at Netflix, and so we were able to work with him just in a different company. So.
Okay, we're going to come back around. Let's go to Frank. How did this movie come about, Frank? Heaven is a traffic jam on the 405. What the heck? Where did you come up with that title, and what is this film?
She said it. So is this going to work better if I'm like this, because I can't bear hearing me twice? Mindy is an artist and works in the same studio as my wife, who's also an artist. And my wife would come home and talk about this woman who sat in the back of the studio making this extraordinary art, who didn't speak to anyone. And over time, she brought her out, and they'd have coffee together, and there was a group show, and I saw her sculptures and was wowed by them. And over time, I got to see her at a couple of openings, and there was an unmistakable warmth between us. I mean, there was something about her that I just connected to. And I just wondered why she was the way she was. And it was really, I had no idea about where this story lived at all. And just out of curiosity, I just said, hey, do you mind if I film you working? At the time, she was building an 8.5 foot, imagine an 8.5 foot bust in paper mache of her psychiatrist. And so I started just filming her making that thing, which led to an interview, which led to another interview. I interviewed her, I think, 6 times. I've got about 20 hours of interview on her. And the film the story just got deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And so this, and more did it become less about art and an artist, although, she's very much that. And it became more and more about extreme depression and anxiety. And so it was this, it was this film that sort of emerged out of just showing up a lot. And for the longest time, I didn't have a clue as to where we were going on this.
So here's a clip. This is not...
The title came out of a quote of hers. And as soon as she said it, I knew that was the title of the film. Because if ever there... So, for those who don't live in LA, the 405 is the north-south road that goes in and out of the west side of Los Angeles to the northern suburbs and to the airport. And it's the most loathed road in LA. People, I've met people who did not get engaged to other people because they lived on the wrong side of the 405. I mean, it's just an awful thing to do. And she was speaking about how much she loved being on the 405, and she explains why, and we opened the film like that. And I thought, if ever there was a line that describes somebody who thinks differently than everybody else, it's that. And we explained very, very, instantly why she loves being on that road. And that gives you the first clue as to who she is. And the film, I probably worked on it. Mine sort of stopped for about a year. In the course of the year, she had a minor breakdown. I was diagnosed with lung cancer. The editor got pregnant and had a child. So there was like this life that sort of interrupted the making of the film. A lot of life got packed into it, and it just needed for all of us to sort of get back to ground zero in order to continue. Sorry.
It's hard to interrupt you when you don't have your head.
Yeah, that's true.
Here's a clip. This is not a trailer. This is something just pulled right out of the center of the film. So maybe you'll explain it when we come back. Here we go.
I wasn't feeling too well on my old medication. And we talked to that medication, which really made things even worse. And I don't want to go back on it. But I've been through several different medications and with all kinds of side effects, and I was having some hallucination. I would wake up in the morning and I would just hear all the towns of the city screaming in my ears. I would hear airplanes, children screaming, honking horns, and terrible things happening to people. And I would see people stuck in pale green glass. And I really thought it was real.
Pretty heavy, Frank, especially that
Yeah.
clip right out of it. And so what did you do about any financing help, or did you do this on your own? And you employed some of our friends' children who are camera people.
It's true.
Ben Marius.
Yeah, I was an executive producer in the TV commercial business for years, and I retired to make a film about my mother a couple of years ago, and it occurred to me that most of the time I'd spent in my career was waiting for somebody to give me permission to do something, as it is for anybody in any part of the film business. And I retired at the age of 63, and I decided that I wasn't going to spend my time waiting anymore. And so my gig was to learn how to do every job that required it. So I shot it, I produced it, I did location sound. I did as many jobs as I could. Ting Poo edited it. Her husband Casey Price did post. Paul Maroon did music. Other than that, I probably, anything having to do with the actual production, I've probably shot 95% of that film by myself. Ben Marius helped me with a bunch of it, but just about, I don't know, 90%, I don't know how much of it, was just me and a camera and sound. So yeah, it was all on me.
What would you do differently? What would you do
Sorry?
differently? What would you do different if you had to do it over again?
Oh, that's a great question. Okay, here's what I learned. I sort of enter with this thing about not wanting to hear the director's voice, which is a prejudice that I wish I didn't have when I began.
Repeat yourself. Your audio was really bad at the beginning there.
Okay.
Cracked up on
So I've never enjoyed listening to a director's voice as he's asking questions, because I always feel like it takes me now I'm aware I'm watching a movie. So, so I ask questions and ask people to answer them with a question. Mindy is one of the most hysterical people in the world, but she reacts. What she does is you say something, and she responds to it. And as a consequence of that, I didn't get the humor that she is. And so there, all that stuff I shot of her while I was on the 405, the amount of footage that I lost because I was shaking so much, laughing at the shit that she was saying. So I would do that differently. I would recognize that she reacts. She's not a storyteller. She's a reactor.
You wouldn't laugh at her, or you wouldn't shake, or?
No, I would listen to myself so she'd have somebody to react to.
Laura, you've been very patient listening to everybody else. As I'm looking at you and thinking about your film that you're about to talk about, I just want to tell a very brief introduction to your film. Years ago, I was doing a show for the History Channel about World War II pilots that had survived crashes. Their planes had gone down, or they're missing planes. And the executive at the History Channel, after I had with one of these pilots, his plane had crashed, and they had recovered his plane. It was 50 years later. This fabulous old guy, and he had these deep wrinkles in his face. He had this great face, and he had some wonderful things to say. And after I showed this sequence to the executive, he said to me, "Couldn't you find somebody younger?" And now you tell us about your film, Edith and Eddie, please.
Yes. Edith and Eddie is a story that began as a love story. So a friend texted me a photo that had been circulating online when the couple got married. They were being called America's oldest interracial newlyweds. They were married at age 95 and 96. And when she texted me this photo, I just kept zooming in and staring into their eyes in my phone, and I really wanted to know more about them. So I connected the dots and connected with the family, and they invited me down to meet them. And so we entered into this as, a tender love story, which it is. And then it unfolds before our eyes into something much darker, and a look at the legal guardianship system and elder rights and elder abuse. And the legal guardianship system was not on my radar before making this film. And when we witnessed what happens with her rights being entirely taken away, and her and Eddie just being so disregarded at the end of their life, I looked into it and found out that this is actually happening to elders across the country, and their story represents so many people. And Edith's daughter, Rebecca, who we become really close with in the film, who, is another central character, she and I spoke to after the nomination, and we, just both recognized that, and she was saying that, she understands that what she and her family went through can now hopefully help other people to, be able to look out for their loved ones and those that they hold.
Let's take a look at the clip. Here we go.
Beautiful. Beautiful place.
It was love at first sight.
Newlyweds, Eddie and Edith.
That's the color of the skin, but the heart. That's what we decided.
No, I don't want to go.
She don't want to go. I don't want her to go.
They think they'll wear us down, but they're not going to wear us down.
The objective is to separate Mom and Eddie and me
and put them into an institutional situation. She's coming with police.
You're evil.
Did you want to come downstairs?
You're doing evil
You
things.
did her hair.
You'll never forget it.
Who's distributing this film now?
We are discussing that right now.
Your audio broke up again. Say that again. Your audio broke
Oh,
up.
sorry. Yeah, we're talking with distributors right now.
And you have a connection with Cartemquin, which is quite a large, storied, successful production house out of Chicago. How did that come about?
Yes. So Steve James, who came on at the tail end of my first film, a feature doc called Lucky, we had a chance meeting, and he helped me finish editing that film and came on as an executive producer, and then took me as a mentor. And here I came with Edith and Eddie, and continued to ask his advice and so on. And so he brought me into the fold at Cartoon Point, which has been really wonderful. And shout
Can I
out to
just
Steve,
add
he's
that-
nominated as
Yeah, I
well.
was just going to say.
Yes, congratulations to Steve James. I guess he'll have a young fella. Looks like he'll have a good future, huh? Fabulous filmmaker with a long career. So, does anybody have any questions that you want to ask your fellow filmmakers while you're here? You have the chance between the four of you.
I don't have a question, but I was going to say that what's so interesting, the intimacy with which everybody here started pursuing these stories. In other words, there was no example here of sort of parachuting in with a budget and a like, a brief from somebody who was telling you what the story was. Everybody just kind of found their way in Elaine's case because it was near her home, in others' case because we just started exploring them. And it's a wonderful and organic way to tell stories, and I find that very exciting.
Yeah, and I'd love to say as well, and Frank, I loved hearing you tell your story about how, you chose to wear all the hats and play all the roles. And I also, with both my first film and Edith and Eddie, if I had waited for a funder, I would have not gotten to make either of those films. And so this was a matter with Edith and Eddie where when I was invited to meet them, I knew that I was not in a position to start financing another documentary by myself. And I told Corwin, who's been my closest creative collaborator film, I said, oh my goodness, I really want to go meet them. And I'm not ready to make another doc. And he said, go and see if something is there. And I went, and something was certainly there. And then as their lives started to unfold, I wound up financing the entire production, myself with, incredible work, a really small team that was just as passionate about it as I was. And Chuck, we spoke about this in the previous conversation, but I just really feel like, either you're going to be there or you're not. And so when you can, then go. And that if I had waited for someone to anoint me as a filmmaker, I would not be sitting here necessarily right now. So it just feels like really, really incredible.
I mean, realize that the good fortune that we're making films when we're making them, and that technology has allowed for us to just go. Just with a minimal amount of anything. You go out and you start to make your film, and you may need more, you need less, but you can, if you've got all of these stuff you need in your hand to begin that film.
What I think Laura said, and when you got cut off, your audio went bad there. But in a conversation that we had in a pre-interview, just to set this up, I told about my teaching experience, and I've taught several classes about documentary and filmmaking. And the first thing I always say in every class now is, you have to the students, you have no excuse not to make a film anymore. Right? Because it used to be you'd have to go buy the film, which was expensive. You'd have to process the film, which was expensive. You'd have to make a work print, which was expensive. And now, I mean, with a camera, as small as this little DSLR camera, which I think, probably costs $1,200 plus the lens. I mean, this shoots 4K internally. This, and the picture is really, really good. So, you don't have any excuse. Well, look, guys, I want to congratulate all of you. I think what each of you has done is a fantastic short film, and I would encourage people who are watching this to think about making their own short film. You all just kind of jumped in the bus and took your camera gear and started shooting, and didn't know where it was going to end up, and I think that's part of the charm of what's happened on all of your films. And the quality of the documentary films in both the feature category and the short category is the highest that it's ever been. And I think, it's a cliche to say you're all winners, but it's absolutely true. It's not really a cliche, because just making the short list, I think, is a great honor. And now, having been nominated, congrats to you. I'm going to wrap it up by saying thanks again for our sponsors, Media Central, Pond 5, and LumaForge. Thank you for your continued support. And to the filmmakers that we saw today, Laura, Frank, Elaine, and Thomas, thank you so much for taking the time on this exciting day. I hope your phone messages are filled to overflowing. You should go check them. And
I'm being congratulated by people who don't like me.
One of my nice emails came from somebody called Alex Braverman, who I think just might be related to you.
Well,
I do want to note before we leave. I do think that we all did pick up the camera and go and do this, but it's such an interesting time to make shorts, especially shorts at a longer length, this sort of like mini featurette length. You can do so much with it. Weaving 2 characters, 3 characters, weaving an entire kitchen. There's so much possibility with this mini featurette type length. And I would love to see more filmmakers go out and make these. The problem with the documentary film world is that you can't apply for development funding until you're basically in production. So, that's why I live in West Virginia. I'm close to everything I'm shooting. It's really easy to be nimble. But I would really encourage people to sort of break out of that mini, 3 to 5 or 12 to 15 and try something and expand the length a little bit, because we've seen a great audience with Heroin, and especially with community engagement and educational screenings. You watch the film and have a 20-minute educational discussion. It's a pretty incredible and powerful length for a film, I think. So I'm just really excited about the form and hope that people like Netflix and others continue to distribute them. And it's exciting. It's an exciting time to be a documentary filmmaker, I think.
I really agree about the length issue. And, you said, Elaine, you'd like to see people expanding from that 8 to 12 to 15-minute thing. But I'd also like to see some people who are just convinced that they've got to do, quote, a feature. I'm directing a feature. That's a thing that everybody's got to say. And there are a lot of wonderful stories that are told in that 30 to 40-minute length. And at a time when people are streaming and so forth, what is this tyranny of the feature? I love feature-length films, but some films could be shorter. And I think I really agree with you. I think it's such an exciting form, sort of more than 20 minutes and less than 39 minutes and 59 seconds. So that
somebody used to write a blog that was called 3959. Because you had to be really careful when you submit to the Academy, because if you're 40 minutes and 6 seconds, you're over. So, Frank, did you have something? You looked like you were about to say something.
No, I think it is a wonderful form. Um, you know, I had an 84-minute cut, and I had a 62-minute cut, and it was spongy. You know, it just felt like there was too much air, and so it became a film when I took out everything that was merely interesting, and unless it propelled the narrative, and you know, it just dropped, and at 40 minutes it became a film.
Okay,
I mean,
guys.
Laura has quite a story. Can I, before we do that, Laura, you should tell the story because you then continued shooting, thinking you were going to make a fuller film, right?
Yes. So, and not if I seem clear. Do I? Clear?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, what we see in the film is about 3 months of time that we spent with Edith and Eddie, and actually I went on to film for well over another year, following the story and waiting for an ending that never came, as well as recognizing that what happened with Edith and Eddie is happening all over, so expanded into the, bigger issue and spoke with elder, justice advocates and activists everywhere, as well as other families who've gone through the same thing. And then when things hit a standstill with his story, I sat down to edit, just to see what we had, and realized that after, a crucial turning point in the Nettie story, everything after that kind of felt like a reach. And so it just felt much more powerful to keep it close with the couple and their love story. And so I'm super grateful that that decision became really clear.
Thank you very much,
Good
guys.
choice.
Thank
I
you.
hope you have a wonderful day.
Congratulations, everyone.
Thank
See you
you.
guys on the circuit, right?
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Almost over.
Oh, don't go anywhere. Thank you, Chuck.